The broadsheet in Isaac Garrett's hands showed a monster, and he had drawn it. He sat alone in the corner booth of the Wheatsheaf Inn, nursing a cup of cider that had gone warm an hour ago, staring at the yellowed paper someone had used to line the bottom of a cracked windowsill. The cartoon orc leered back at him with fangs like daggers, claws dripping with blood, eyes full of mindless hunger. Beneath the image ran the caption he had lettered himself 8 years ago. "The green menace knows no mercy, will you let them cross our borders?" Isaac folded the paper once, twice, 3 times until the image disappeared, then slipped it into his satchel with the rest of the poison from his past. 23 years old, and already haunted by work he wished he could burn. But the plate still existed somewhere, and printers could run off copies whenever the mood for fear-mongering struck. "Master Garrett." A woman's voice, low and careful. He looked up to find an orc woman standing beside his table, and his first thought was how the drawing had lied. She was tall, yes, nearly his own height, but willowy where his propaganda had shown bulk, with fine-boned hands clasped in front of an apron over a simple gray dress. Her skin was the green of new leaves, and her tusks were small things, barely visible even as she spoke. Her dark hair was pulled back in a braid that fell past her shoulders. "I am," Isaac said, standing quickly enough that his chair scraped against the floorboards. "Can I help you? My name is Orla Moss. I manage the Whitmore farm 3 miles north of here." Her voice had the precise diction of someone who had learned to speak very carefully. "I would like to commission a portrait." Isaac had painted perhaps 24 memorial portraits since arriving in this part of the frontier shires a month ago. Farmers wanted images of their parents, their children, their wives. He had a steady hand and an eye for capturing the small details that made a face a person rather than a study. It was honest work, the kind that let him sleep at night. Mostly. Of course. "When would you like to begin?" "Tomorrow, if you are available. I can pay half in advance." She drew a small purse from her apron pocket and set it on the table. The coins clinked with a sound that meant real silver, not copper. Isaac nodded slowly. "Tomorrow at first light, then." "I will need good natural lighting for the sittings." Something flickered across Orla's face, too quick for him to read. "I should tell you I have a specific request." "Most people do. I am listening." Orla's hands tightened on each other. "I want you to teach me how humans smile while you paint." Isaac blinked. "I do not understand." "I know how to smile," Orla said and demonstrated. Her lips curved upward in a perfect crescent, but her mouth stayed firmly closed, the expression stopping at her cheekbones. It looked practiced, careful, entirely without joy. "But I do not know if it is correct, if it is what humans do. So I thought a portrait painter must understand faces better than anyone. You could teach me." He should have said no. Should have recognized the complication, the story behind the request that would inevitably tangle itself around his conscience. Instead, he found himself nodding. "I can try." The relief that washed over Orla's face was unmistakable. "Thank you. Tomorrow, then." She left before he could ask any of the questions piling up in his mind. Isaac sat back down and pulled the folded broadsheet from his satchel, smoothing it flat against the table. The monster grinned up at him, all fangs and malice. He had drawn that. He had convinced thousands of people that this was what orcs looked like, and tomorrow he was going to paint the truth. The Whitmore farm occupied a gentle slope of land that caught the morning sun like a blessing. Isaac arrived with his satchel of brushes, his portable easel, and the small chest that held his pigments and oils. Orla met him at the door of the main house, a sturdy timber building that smelled of bread and herbs. "Come in," she said. "I have set up a room with good light." She led him through a kitchen where an older human woman was kneading dough, up a set of narrow stairs, and into a bedroom that faced east. Someone had moved most of the furniture against the walls, leaving space for a chair positioned to catch the sunlight streaming through the window. A vase of wildflowers sat on the sill. "Will this do?" Orla asked. "It is perfect." Isaac began unpacking his supplies, setting up the easel at the correct distance. "Have you sat for a portrait before?" "Never." "Then the first thing you should know is that it takes time. I will need at least a dozen sittings, perhaps more. 2 hours each if you can spare them." "I can spare them." Orla settled into the chair, back straight, hands folded in her lap. The careful smile was already in place. Isaac mixed his base colors in silence, letting his eyes adjust to the quality of the light, the planes of Orla's face. High cheekbones, a strong jawline, a nose that tilted up slightly at the end. Eyes the color of amber. Beautiful, he realized with a small shock. She was beautiful, and he had spent years teaching people to see her as a monster. "Why do you want to learn how humans smile?" he asked, loading his brush with a pale green mixed from yellow and blue and white. Orla's careful smile did not waver. "Because I live among humans. I wish to do it correctly. But you already smile. You are doing it now. This is the smile I was taught." Her voice remained level, pleasant. "When I was 6 years old, the woman who raised me told me that I must never open my mouth when I smiled because my tusks frightened people. I have practiced in mirrors, I have watched human faces, but I do not know if I have learned correctly, if there is some small detail I am missing." Isaac's hand stilled on the canvas. "Who taught you that? To hide your tusks?" Lady Caroline Whitmore. "She took me into her household as part of the peace accords after the border wars. I was to be educated to learn human ways to serve as proof that orcs could be civilized." Orla's voice did not change, but something in her eyes went distant. "She was very kind, very patient. She only wanted me to be safe." The border wars had ended 9 years ago, when Isaac was 14. He remembered the propaganda broadsheets his older brother had brought home, the ones that had first taught him there was money in drawing fear. He had been so proud when the printer commissioned him to make his own. "And you have lived here since then?" Isaac asked quietly. "Yes. Lady Caroline passed 3 years ago. She left the farm to me." Orla shifted slightly in the chair. "Should I not move?" "You can move a little. I am only blocking in the basic shapes today." Isaac made himself focus on the canvas, on the sweep of her jawline, the angle of her shoulders. "Tell me about the farm." "We grow wheat mostly, some barley. I have 4 tenant families who work the land, and we send our grain to the mill in Ashford." Orla's voice relaxed slightly as she spoke of practical things. "This year's crop is good. The weather has been kind. Do you like farming?" A pause. "I am good at it. The tenants trust me. That is more than I expected to have." Isaac worked in silence for a while, losing himself in the rhythm of brush against canvas. He had painted dozens of faces, hundreds maybe, but he had never quite felt this combination of pressure and purpose. Every stroke mattered. Every choice of color was a choice about truth. "You have not told me how humans smile," Orla said eventually, "because I am trying to understand the question first." Isaac stepped back from the easel, studying what he had done. The basic structure of her face was there, still ghostly and incomplete. "There is not one way that humans smile. There are as many ways as there are reasons to smile." "Then teach me one way." "I do not think it works like that." Orla's careful smile finally faltered. "Then what should I do?" Isaac set down his brush and looked at her directly. "Why do you want to smile like a human?" "Because I am not." Orla stopped. Started again. "Because I live in a human world. Because every face I see is human. Because when I look in the mirror I see something that does not match and I do not know how to fix it." The pain in her voice was so carefully controlled that it took Isaac a moment to recognize it. When he did, something in his chest tightened. "There is nothing to fix," he said. "You say that, but you do not live in this face." "No," Isaac admitted. "I do not." He picked up his brush again and returned to work. They did not speak much for the rest of the sitting, but the silence felt less empty than before. When 2 hours had passed and the light began to shift, Isaac cleaned his brushes and packed his supplies. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked. Orla nodded, standing and stretching slightly. "May I see what you have done?" "Not yet. I prefer to wait until there is more to see." "Of course." Orla walked him to the door, and as he stepped outside she said, "Thank you for coming." Isaac looked back at her, at the careful smile that had already returned to her face. "Thank you for hiring me." He walked back toward the village with his satchel heavy on his shoulder and his thoughts heavier still. Somewhere in a printer's shop, the plates for his old drawings still existed. Somewhere people were still looking at those images and learning to fear green skin and tusks. He needed to find those plates. The second sitting went more easily. Orla seemed less tense, and Isaac found his rhythm faster. He worked on the structure of her face, the way the light caught the curve of her cheek, the shadows beneath her jaw. She asked him questions about his work, where he had trained, what he liked to paint, how long he had been traveling the summer circuit, and he answered honestly, leaving out only the war years and what he had drawn. "You must see many faces," Orla said at one point. "I do. Do you remember them?" "After you have moved on," Isaac considered this. "Some of them, the ones that mattered." "How do you know which ones matter?" "I do not know until later. Memory decides for us, I think." Orla absorbed this in silence. Then, "You have not taught me about smiling yet." "I have been thinking about it," Isaac said, which was true. He had been thinking about little else. "I think the problem is that you are approaching it backwards." "What do you mean?" "You are trying to learn the expression first and then attach it to feeling. But it works the other way. The feeling creates the expression." "I have feelings," Orla said quietly. "I know you do, but you have spent years training yourself to hide them, to keep your mouth closed, to smile carefully, to watch how humans do it and copy them." Isaac set down his brush and met her eyes. "I think you need to stop trying to smile like a human and start trying to smile like yourself." Orla's hands tightened in her lap. "I do not know what that means." "Neither do I yet, but we have time to figure it out." The sittings developed a rhythm over the next week. Isaac would arrive at first light, set up his easel, and work while Orla sat with her careful smile and her careful posture. They talked about small things, the progress of the harvest, the weather, the gossip from the village. Isaac found himself looking forward to the mornings, to the quiet room and the quality of the light and the sound of Orla's voice. He was falling for her. He realized one morning as he mixed the exact shade of amber for her eyes. Somewhere between the first sitting and the seventh, admiration had become something warmer, something that made his pulse quicken when she smiled at him. Even the careful smile. Especially the careful smile, because he was beginning to understand what it cost her. "Tell me something you have never told anyone," he said impulsively. Orla blinked. "Why?" "Because I want to paint you as you are, not as you think you should be. And I think you spend a lot of time being what you think you should be." A long silence. Then, "I hate wheat." Isaac laughed, surprised. "You hate wheat? You run a wheat farm, I know. It is terrible, isn't it?" Something in Orla's expression shifted, became more real. "But I do. I hate the smell of it when it is harvested. I hate the dust. I hate the way it gets into everything. If I could grow anything else and still make the farm work, I would." "What would you grow instead?" "Flowers. Ridiculous, impractical flowers." Orla's smile was different now, rueful and genuine. "I told you it was something I had never told anyone." "Why flowers?" because they do not have to be useful to be worth growing, because they exist just to be beautiful, and that feels like a kind of freedom. Isaac painted in silence for a while, thinking about this. "There is a field on the south edge of your land," he said eventually. "The soil is too rocky for wheat. You could plant flowers there. It would be a waste of land. It would be yours." Orla looked at him for a long moment, and Isaac realized too late that he had revealed something, some edge of feeling that he should have kept to himself. But before he could retreat behind professional distance, Orla said softly, "You are a strange man, Isaac Garrett. I have been told that before." "Have you? By whom?" Isaac hesitated, then decided on honesty. "By the people who thought I was wasting my talent. I could have stayed in the city, painted nobles and merchants, made real money. Instead, I travel to small farms and paint memorial portraits for people who can barely afford them." "Why do you do it then?" "Because it matters more." Isaac met her eyes. "Because when I paint someone's grandmother or their child or their wife, I am making sure they are remembered. That their face is not forgotten. That feels like it matters." "It does matter," Orla said quietly. The portrait was taking shape now. Isaac had captured the basic structure of Orla's face, the colors of her skin and eyes and hair. Now he was working on the details, the small things that made her herself, the way one eyebrow sat slightly higher than the other, the tiny scar on her chin, the exact curve of her tusks where they pressed against her upper lip. He wanted to paint her smiling with her mouth open, tusks visible, eyes bright with real joy. But she had not smiled that way once in his presence, and he could not paint what he had not seen. On the 10th sitting, Orla asked him about the war. "You must have been young when it ended," she said. "Do you remember much of it?" Isaac's hand stilled on the canvas. "Some. Why do you ask?" "Because it shaped everything. The border accords, the peace hostages, the reason I am here at all." Orla's voice was thoughtful, but no one speaks of it anymore. "It is as if everyone agreed to pretend it never happened. Some things are easier to forget," Isaac said carefully. "I do not think anyone has forgotten. I think they have just decided not to speak of it." Orla paused. "I was 6 when I was sent to Lady Caroline. Too young to have fought, but old enough to remember being afraid. My parents gave me to the human soldiers because the alternative was worse." "What was the alternative?" "Death. For all of us. The village I came from was going to be destroyed in the fighting. The peace accords offered a different option: send the children to human families, let them be raised as proof that orcs could be civilized. My parents chose survival." Isaac set down his brush, his throat tight. "Do you ever see them, your parents?" "No. Part of the agreement was that I would be raised entirely in a human household. No contact with orc communities, no reminders of my old life. Lady Caroline followed the rules carefully." Orla's voice remained level, but her hands tightened in her lap. "I do not even know if they are still alive." "I am sorry," Isaac said, and meant it with his whole heart. "It was a long time ago. That does not make it hurt less." Orla looked at him, and for a moment her careful mask slipped. He saw grief in her eyes and loneliness and a kind of weary acceptance. Then she smiled her careful smile and said, "We should continue. The light is good today." Isaac picked up his brush and returned to work, but his mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about the broadsheets, about the cartoons he had drawn of orcs as mindless monsters. He was thinking about 6-year-old children being taken from their parents in the name of peace. He was thinking about the plates that still existed somewhere, still printing lies. He needed to find them, and then he needed to destroy them. That evening, Isaac walked to the village of Ashford and found the postal house. The clerk was a tired-looking man named Peter who remembered everything and everyone who passed through. "I need to find a printer," Isaac said. "Someone who would have been running broadsheets during the war." Political cartoons, that sort of thing. Peter scratched his chin. That would be old Vernon Cross. Runs a print shop in Millbrook about 15 miles south. Still does broadsheets and pamphlets, last I heard. Why do you ask? I might have some work for him. Well, you can take the post coach. Runs twice a week. Isaac took the coach the next morning, sacrificing a day's sitting with Orla to make the trip. Millbrook was a market town, larger than Ashford, with the kind of bustling anonymity that made Isaac's skin prickle with old memories. The print shop occupied a corner building near the town square, its windows dark with ink and dust. Vernon Cross was a man in his 60s, thin and stooped, with ink-stained fingers and suspicious eyes. "What do you want?" "I am looking for some old plates," Isaac said. "From the war." "Political cartoons." Vernon's eyes narrowed. "I don't keep records of buyers. I am not looking to buy new prints. I am looking to buy the plates themselves. Why would I sell the plates? I can still run off copies whenever someone wants them. Just last month I did a run for a tavern in Chester." The news hit Isaac like a fist to the stomach. His drawings were still being printed, still spreading poison. "I will pay you twice what they are worth. Just the plates, nothing else. Let me see your coin first." Isaac had brought most of his savings from the summer's portrait work. He laid the purse on the counter, and Vernon counted it with the speed of long practice. "This will buy you about half of what I have," Vernon said finally. "I've got plates from 4 different artists, yours included if you're who I think you are." Isaac's hands tightened on the counter. "You know who I am, Isaac Garrett. You signed your work, boy. Did nice work, too, clear lines, good composition. Some of the best propaganda I ever ran. I want to buy all of it, every plate you have." "Then you'll need more money." Isaac thought quickly. "I can get more. But I need you to agree not to run any more copies in the meantime." Vernon snorted. "I'm a businessman. Why would I do that?" "Because if you do not, I will go to every tavern and town hall in 3 counties and tell them that you are still profiting from war propaganda, that you are stirring up old hatreds for money." Isaac met Vernon's eyes. "The war is over. The peace accords hold. People want to move forward, not back. You keep printing those broadsheets and you will find yourself very unpopular very fast." Vernon's jaw tightened. "That's a threat." "It is a fact. Sell me the plates and you get paid fairly for work that is no longer profitable anyway. Refuse, and you make an enemy of everyone who wants peace." They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Vernon spat on the floor and said, "Come back in a week with the rest of the money. I'll have the plates ready." Isaac spent the walk back to the coach trying to calculate how much more he needed. His summer's earnings would not be enough. He would need to take commissions fast and hope they paid well. He thought of Orla waiting for him at the farm, the portrait still unfinished, and his chest tightened with something that felt like panic. He should tell her. She deserved to know what he had done, what he was trying to undo. But the thought of watching her face change when she realized, of seeing trust turn to betrayal, he was not ready for that. Not yet. When he returned to the farm the next morning, Orla was waiting on the porch. "You missed yesterday's sitting." "I had business in Millbrook." "I am sorry I did not send word." "It is fine." But something in her voice was uncertain. "Is everything all right?" "Yes, just printer's business." Isaac forced a smile. "Shall we work?" They climbed the stairs to the sitting room, and Isaac set up his easel with hands that felt clumsy with guilt. Orla settled into her chair, and he noticed that her careful smile looked more strained than usual. "Did something happen while I was gone?" he asked. "No, everything is fine." But it was not fine. Isaac could see it in the tension of her shoulders, the way her hands gripped each other in her lap. He worked in silence for a while, trying to recapture the rhythm they had built, but it felt forced now, artificial. "You do not have to tell me," he said finally, "but I can see that something is wrong." Orla was quiet for so long that Isaac thought she would not answer. Then she said, "One of my tenants came to me yesterday. His daughter is getting married, and he wanted to know if it would be all right to hold the wedding feast in the main barn." "What did you say?" I said, "Of course. It is his barn as much as mine." Orla's voice was carefully neutral. And then he asked if I would mind staying in the house during the feast, because some of the guests might be uncomfortable. Isaac's brush stilled. "He asked you to hide. He asked me to be considerate. It is not the same thing." "It is exactly the same thing." Isaac set down his brush, anger rising hot in his chest. "You own the land. You have been nothing but fair to him, and he wants you to hide in your own house because his guests might be uncomfortable looking at you. He was being kind. He did not have to ask. He could have just held the feast somewhere else." Orla's hands tightened. "I should be grateful that he thought to include me at all." "Grateful? Orla, you are not a monster to be hidden away. You are—" Isaac stopped, searching for words. "You are a person. You deserve to be treated like one." "I am an orc," Orla said quietly. "That changes things. It should not, but it does." Isaac wanted to argue, to insist that she demand better, but he could see the weariness in her eyes. This was not a new fight for her. This was a battle she had been waging her entire life, and she had learned when to push and when to retreat. "What did you tell him?" Isaac asked. "I told him I would think about it." Orla's smile flickered, fragile and sad. "I will probably say yes. It will make things easier for everyone. Except for you. I am used to it." Isaac picked up his brush again, but his hands were shaking with anger he had no right to feel. He had done this. He had helped create the world where Orla had to hide her face at a wedding feast on her own land. His drawings had taught people to fear her, to see her as something less than human. He needed to tell her. But the words stuck in his throat, heavy and toxic. They worked in silence for the rest of the sitting. When Isaac packed up to leave, Orla walked him to the door and said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For being angry on my behalf. No one has done that in a long time." Isaac looked at her, at the careful smile and the guarded eyes, and felt something crack open in his chest. "You deserve people who will be angry for you, perhaps, but I have learned not to expect it." Isaac walked back to the village with his thoughts in chaos. He needed more money for the plates. He needed to finish Orla's portrait. He needed to tell her the truth before she found out some other way. The tasks piled up in his mind like debts he could not pay. That night, he sat in his rented room above the Wheatchief Inn and counted his money. He was still 40 pounds short of what Vernon wanted. At his usual rates, that would take at least 3 more commissions. 3 more weeks, maybe 4. He could not wait that long. The longer he delayed, the more likely it became that Orla would discover the truth on her own. And that would be worse than anything Isaac could imagine. He spent the next day walking through Ashford and the surrounding farms, asking if anyone needed portrait work. He found 2 commissions: an elderly farmer who wanted a portrait of his late wife, painted from memory, and a merchant's family who wanted a group portrait for their parlor. The work would take time, but it would give him the money he needed. He explained to Orla that he would need to reduce their sittings to every other day for a while. She accepted this with her usual grace, though he thought he saw disappointment flicker across her face. "I understand. You have other clients." "I will finish your portrait," Isaac promised. "It is the most important work I have done." "Why?" "Because I am falling in love with you," Isaac thought. "Because every stroke of the brush feels like an apology I do not know how to speak aloud." "Because it matters," he said instead. The next 2 weeks blurred together. Isaac split his time between Orla's sittings and his other commissions, working long hours that left his hands cramped and his eyes strained. The portrait of Orla was nearly finished now. He had captured her face with a precision that bordered on reverence, every detail exact, every color true. But something was missing. The painting showed Orla as she presented herself to the world, beautiful, composed, carefully smiling. It did not show the woman he had come to know, the one who hated wheat and wanted to grow flowers, who bore loneliness with quiet dignity and asked impossible questions about smiling. He needed to see her smile with her tusks showing. Just once. On the morning of what would be their 17th sitting, Isaac arrived at the farm to find Orla waiting on the porch with a troubled expression. "What is wrong?" he asked immediately. "Come inside. There is something I need to show you." She led him not to the sitting room but to the parlor, where a piece of yellowed paper lay on the table. Isaac's stomach dropped before he even looked at it. He knew what it was. He knew. The broadsheet showed an orc with fangs like knives, claws dripping blood, eyes empty of anything human. The caption read, "They will take your land, your lives, your children. Stop the green menace now." Isaac's own signature sat in the corner, small but unmistakable. "I found it this morning," Orla said quietly. One of the tenant children was playing in the old meeting hall at the edge of the property. It was lining a drawer in a desk that has been there since before I came to the farm. She paused. "Is this your work?" Isaac could not speak. His throat had closed around words that felt like poison. "Isaac," Orla said, and her voice was very calm, very steady. "Is this your work?" "Yes," he managed. Orla nodded once, as if confirming something she already knew. "How many of these did you draw?" "I do not know. 20. Maybe more. The printer had me do a series during the war." "During the war?" Orla's hands were very still at her sides. "You would have been young. 14 when I started, 16 when I stopped." Isaac forced himself to look at her, though it felt like tearing out his own eyes. "I was good at drawing. My family needed money. The printer paid well for propaganda. I did not." He stopped, started again. "I did not think about what I was doing, what it would mean. I just drew what they told me to draw." "Monsters," Orla said softly. "Yes. And now you travel the countryside painting memorial portraits, making sure people are remembered as they really were." Orla's voice was still calm, but something cold and terrible had entered it. "Is that why you took my commission? Guilt?" "No, I took it because—" Isaac struggled for words. "Because I wanted to paint the truth. Because I wanted to do something right. But you did not tell me. You let me sit for you, let me talk to you, let me—" Orla's voice cracked just slightly and she stopped. When she spoke again, her composure had returned. "You let me trust you. I was going to tell you. I was trying to fix it first. I found the printer who still has the plates. I am buying them, all of them, so they can never be printed again." "How noble." The bitterness in Orla's voice was like acid. "And then what? You burn the plates and feel better about yourself. That does not undo what you did. It does not erase the fact that your drawings are hanging in taverns and town halls across 3 counties, teaching people to fear me. I know it does not undo anything, but it is what I can do, and I am trying to do it." Orla picked up the broadsheet, holding it carefully as if it might burn her. "Do you know what it is like to see yourself drawn as a monster? To know that this is what people see when they look at you?" "No," Isaac said. "I do not. I am sorry. You are sorry." Orla laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "Everyone is always sorry. Sorry for the war, sorry for the fear, sorry for the way things are. But no one changes anything. They just keep asking me to smile with my mouth closed and be grateful that they let me exist." Isaac had no answer. There was no answer that would make this better, no words that could repair what he had broken. "I think you should leave," Orla said quietly. "Orla, leave, please." Isaac gathered his supplies in numb silence and walked out of the farm without looking back. The autumn air was crisp and bright, utterly indifferent to the wreckage in his chest. He had known this moment would come. He had known, and he had still let himself fall in love with her, still let himself hope that maybe, somehow it could end differently. He walked back to the village in a fog of shame and grief. When he reached his room at the inn, he pulled out the money he had earned from his commissions and counted it carefully. He had enough now. Just barely, but enough. He took the post coach to Millbrook the next morning and found Vernon Cross at his print shop. "I have the money." Vernon counted it twice, then nodded. "Wait here." He returned with a wooden crate filled with metal plates. Isaac recognized his own work immediately: the clean lines, the exaggerated features, the careful composition designed to provoke fear. There were plates from other artists too, crude and vicious and effective. "All of it?" Isaac asked. "All of it. You've bought my entire war collection." Vernon paused. "What are you going to do with them?" "Destroy them." Vernon shrugged. "Your money, your choice. But I'll tell you something for free: those plates were never my best work. The stuff people want now is gentler. Peace accords made everyone want to forget the war. Bad for business, good for the world, I suppose." Isaac carried the crate back to Ashford and locked it in his room. Then he sat on the edge of his bed and tried to figure out what to do next. He could destroy the plates. That would stop new copies from being printed. But Vernon was right: the damage was already done. The broadsheets already existed, hanging in taverns and lining drawers and teaching people to fear green skin and tusks. He needed to replace them. Not with nothing, but with something better. Something true. The idea came to him slowly, piece by piece, like a portrait taking shape on canvas. He could not undo the past, but he could create a new present. He needed to paint orc families. Real portraits, not propaganda. And then he needed to print them and distribute them the same way his broadsheets had been distributed: cheaply, widely, everywhere. It would take time and money and effort. It would not erase what he had done, but it would be something. Isaac spent the next 2 days sketching ideas and making plans. He would need to find orc families willing to sit for portraits. He would need to convert the paintings to print somehow, maybe work with a different printer who understood the project. He would need money for supplies and printing costs. It was an enormous undertaking, maybe impossible. He was going to do it anyway. On the 3rd day, someone knocked on his door. Isaac opened it to find Orla standing in the hallway, still and composed in a dark blue dress. "May I come in?" she asked. Isaac stepped aside wordlessly. Orla entered and looked around the small room, her gaze landing on the crate of plates sitting in the corner. "Are those them?" she asked. "Yes, I bought them 2 days ago." Orla crossed to the crate and opened it, pulling out one of the plates. She studied it in silence, her face unreadable. "This is your work?" "Yes, it is very good, technically." Orla set the plate back in the crate carefully. "You are talented. That makes it worse somehow. If you had been a bad artist, the drawings would not have been as effective." "I know." Orla turned to face him. "Why did you buy these?" "So they could not be printed anymore." "And then what? You just keep them in a crate in your room?" "No, I am going to destroy them." Isaac hesitated, then decided on complete honesty. "But first I wanted to replace them with real portraits of orc families, printed and distributed the same way the broadsheets were, something true instead of propaganda." Orla stared at him. "That would be expensive." "Yes, and time-consuming." "Yes, and it still would not undo what you did." "No," Isaac agreed. "It would not." Orla was quiet for a long moment. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to help me." The silence stretched between them, fragile and tense. Then Orla said, "You want me to help you create a project to undo the damage you caused?" "Yes. I know I have no right to ask. I know you should never want to see me again." But Isaac took a breath. "You asked me to teach you how humans smile. I told you I thought you were asking the wrong question, that you needed to stop trying to smile like a human and start trying to smile like yourself. I think this is the same thing." I cannot make people see orcs the way they see humans, but I can show them the truth. And the truth is complicated and real and nothing like what I drew." "The truth," Orla repeated. "What do you know about the truth?" "Less than you do. That is why I need your help." Orla crossed to the window and stood looking out at the street below. Isaac waited, his heart hammering against his ribs. He had no idea what she would say. No idea if she would stay or leave, help or refuse, forgive or condemn. Finally, Orla said, "If I help you with this, it is not forgiveness. I do not know if I can forgive you. I do not know if I should. I understand. And if we do this, we do it right. Real portraits, not propaganda in the opposite direction. People as they are, not as symbols." "Yes." Orla turned to face him. "Then I will help you, not for you. For the families who deserve to be seen as they really are." Isaac felt something loosen in his chest, though it was not quite relief, more like the beginning of a chance at redemption. "Thank you. Do not thank me yet. This is going to be difficult." Orla paused. "And expensive." "How were you planning to pay for it?" "I have some money left from the summer's work. I can take more commissions. Work through the winter if I need to." "That will not be enough. Printing costs money. So does traveling to find families willing to sit for portraits." Orla's voice was thoughtful. "I can contribute. The farm does well enough. I cannot ask you to. You did not ask. I offered." Orla met his eyes. "If we are going to do this, we do it properly. That means funding it properly." They spent the rest of the afternoon making plans. Orla knew several orc families in the region, people who had come through the peace accords and made lives on the frontier. Some were farm workers, others artisans, a few merchants. Isaac would need to travel to them, earn their trust, paint their portraits. Then the paintings would need to be converted to prints, woodcuts, probably, or lithographs, something that could be reproduced cheaply and distributed widely. "We will need a printer," Orla said. "Someone who understands what we are trying to do." "Not Vernon Cross," Isaac said firmly. "No." "Someone else." Orla thought for a moment. "There is a print shop in Farbridge, about 20 miles west. The woman who runs it is young, just taken over from her father. She might be willing to try something new." They took the coach to Farbridge the next day. The print shop was smaller than Vernon's, cleaner, with windows that actually let in light. The printer was a woman in her 30s named Judith Ward, with ink-stained hands and sharp, curious eyes. "Portraits of orc families," she repeated after Isaac explained the project. "Printed and sold at cost, or given away if necessary," Isaac said. "The goal is distribution, not profit." Judith looked at Orla, then back at Isaac. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I spent the war drawing lies," Isaac said, "and I want to spend the peace drawing the truth." "Show me your work." Isaac had brought his portable portfolio. He pulled out several of the memorial portraits he had done over the summer: a farmer's wife with laugh lines around her eyes, an elderly man with hands gnarled from decades of work, a young woman holding a baby. Judith studied them carefully, holding each one up to the light. "You are good," she said finally. "Very good. These are honest." "That is what I am trying for." Judith set down the portraits and looked at Orla. "What about you? Why are you part of this?" "Because I am tired of being seen as a monster," Orla said simply. "And because if someone is finally willing to show the truth, I want to make sure it is actually true, not just more propaganda, gentler this time." Judith nodded slowly. "I like that. Honesty over propaganda." She paused, thinking. "I can do woodcuts. They are cheaper to produce than lithographs and they hold up better for long print runs. But you will need to convert the paintings first." "Do you know how to work in woodcut?" "I can learn," Isaac said, "or I can teach you. If you are willing to work the press with me, help with the production, I will do the printing at cost. Just materials, no profit." Judith smiled slightly. "I am new enough to this business that I can afford to take risks, and I like the idea of this project." They shook on it, and Isaac felt the plan solidify into something real. He had an ally now, someone who understood what they were trying to do and believed it was worth doing. Over the next several weeks, Isaac and Orla traveled to orc families across the frontier shires. It was slow work, careful work. Many families were suspicious at first, wary of a human painter with promises of honest portraits. Orla's presence helped. She spoke to them in their own language, a rolling, guttural tongue that Isaac did not understand, and explained who she was and what they were trying to do. Slowly, family by family, they agreed. Isaac painted a farmer named Thok and his wife Grima, who had worked the same plot of land for 15 years, and had 3 children who were growing up more human than orc, speaking the language better, wearing the clothes better, but still green-skinned and tusked and proud. He painted a blacksmith named Zul, who had lost an arm in the war and now ran a small forge. His work so fine that people came from 3 towns over to buy his tools. He painted a midwife named Shara who had delivered half the babies in her village and kept her orc name even when people suggested she change it to something easier for humans to pronounce. Each portrait took time. Isaac worked carefully, capturing not just faces but stories. The way Thok's hands rested on his wife's shoulder, the pride in Zul's expression as he showed Isaac a perfectly balanced hammer, the gentleness in Shara's eyes as she spoke about the children she had helped bring into the world. Orla sat in on every session, watching, sometimes translating, sometimes just being present. Isaac learned more about her during those weeks than he had in all their sittings. He learned that she spoke 3 languages, her birth tongue, the formal human dialect she had been taught by Lady Caroline, and the frontier common that everyone used for trade. He learned that she could read and write in all 3, that she kept detailed farm records, that she had a gift for numbers. He learned that she loved music, but had never learned to play an instrument because Lady Caroline had worried it would draw attention. He learned that she still did not smile with her mouth open, even among other orcs. The work was exhausting and exhilarating. Isaac felt like he was finally using his talent the way it was meant to be used, to reveal rather than conceal, to connect rather than divide. He and Orla fell into a rhythm of travel and painting, of long conversations on coach rides and quiet evenings in rented rooms at country inns. They did not speak about the past. They did not speak about what they were becoming to each other. But Isaac felt it anyway, the slow accumulation of trust and understanding and something deeper. He was still in love with her, maybe more than before. After 6 weeks of travel and painting, Isaac had completed 12 portraits. He brought them to Judith's print shop and spent another 2 weeks learning to work in woodcut, translating the paintings into blocks of wood that could be inked and pressed. It was different from painting, more physical, more final. Every cut of the knife was a commitment, but Isaac found he liked the certainty of it, the way the image emerged in reverse, dark lines on pale wood. Orla came to the print shop most days and learned to work the press. She was stronger than Isaac, better at the repetitive physical labor of inking and pressing and pulling each print. They worked side by side, hardly speaking, but the silence was comfortable now, companionable. When they had printed 50 copies of each portrait, 600 prints in total, Judith helped them organize distribution. They sent bundles to taverns, town halls, meeting houses, churches. Anywhere that had once held Isaac's propaganda broadsheets, they sent the new portraits. And they sold them for a penny each, just enough to cover the cost of materials. The response was mixed. Some people welcomed the portraits, hung them alongside the memorial paintings of their own families. Others were hostile, accused Isaac and Orla of trying to rewrite history, of making orcs seem too human. A few tavern keepers sent the portraits back unopened, but some people looked at the portraits and saw the truth. That was what mattered. One evening in late autumn, Isaac and Orla sat in Judith's print shop after a long day of pressing. They were both tired, ink-stained, satisfied. The first run of portraits was complete. The plates from Isaac's old work had been destroyed. He and Orla had melted them down in Judith's furnace and poured the metal into molds for new type. It was done. What happens now? Orla asked. Isaac looked at the stacks of prints drying on racks around the room. We keep going. Paint more families, make more portraits, keep replacing the lies with truth. That could take years, probably. Orla was quiet for a moment. And your other work, the memorial portraits, I can do both. Travel in the summer, print in the winter. Isaac paused. If you are willing to keep helping, I am willing. Orla's voice was soft, but I need to ask you something. Anything? Why do you keep doing this? You bought the plates, you destroyed them, you have started to replace them. You could walk away now, move to a different region, start fresh. But you keep working on this project, keep traveling with me, she stopped. Why? Isaac could have deflected, could have talked about justice or restitution or making amends. But they had spent months working together, building something real from the wreckage of his past. She deserved honesty. Because I am in love with you, he said quietly. And because this is the only way I know to show you that I understand what I did. Not just the drawings, but the world they helped create. The world where you have to hide your tusks and smile carefully and be grateful for scraps of kindness. I cannot fix that world, but I can spend the rest of my life trying to change it, if you will let me. Orla stared at him, her amber eyes wide. You are in love with me? Yes. Even though I am, she gestured at herself, at her green skin and small tusks and pointed ears. Not even though, just because you are you. Isaac took a breath. I know I have no right to your affection. I know what I did and what it cost, but I needed you to know. Before anything else happens, before we finish this project or move forward or make any other plans, I needed you to know that I love you. The silence stretched between them. Isaac waited, his heart hammering, for Orla to speak. To accept or reject, to stay or leave, to offer him anything or nothing. Finally, Orla said, I do not know how to do this. Do what? Be loved, be wanted. Her voice was very small. I have spent my whole life learning how to be acceptable, how to be tolerated. I do not know what it means to be loved. Isaac crossed to her slowly, giving her time to retreat if she wanted. She did not move. He took her hands in his, feeling the slight tremor in her fingers. Then we learned together, he said. I do not know how to love someone I have hurt. You do not know how to be loved by someone who hurt you, but maybe we figure it out, if you want to try. Orla looked down at their joined hands. You asked me once what I had never told anyone, about hating wheat and wanting to grow flowers. I remember. I have something else I have never told anyone. Orla met his eyes, and there was something fierce and vulnerable in her expression. I am afraid that if I open my mouth when I smile, if I show my tusks, people will see the monster from your drawings, that I will become the thing they fear. So I have spent years trying to smile like a human to hide what I am. But the truth is I do not want to hide anymore. I want to be seen. Even if it frightens people, even if it makes me harder to love. It would not make you harder to love, Isaac said. It would make you easier. Because I would be loving the real you, not the carefully hidden version. You do not know what you are asking. Then show me. Orla pulled her hands from his and stepped back. For a moment, Isaac thought she was leaving, retreating back into the careful distance she had maintained since finding his broadsheet. But instead, she took a deep breath and smiled. really smiled with her mouth open and her tusks visible, and her whole face transformed with joy. It was the most beautiful thing Isaac had ever seen. "There," Orla said, and her voice was shaking. "That is what I look like when I am happy. That is what I have been hiding." Isaac felt something break open in his chest, something warm and bright and overwhelming. "You are beautiful." "I have tusks. I know, they are beautiful too." Isaac crossed to her again slowly and cupped her face in his hands. "All of you is beautiful. The parts you show and the parts you hide. The careful smile and the real one, I love all of it." Orla closed her eyes, and when she opened them again there were tears on her lashes. "You are a very strange man, Isaac Garrett. You have said that before." "I think I might love you too," Orla whispered. "I do not know when it happened, somewhere between the first sitting and now. Somewhere between anger and understanding. I think I might love you." Isaac kissed her then, gentle and careful, and felt her smile against his mouth. The real smile, tusks and all, bright with the kind of joy that could not be taught or hidden or carefully controlled. Just real, just hers. They worked through the winter, painting and printing and distributing portraits. The project grew beyond what Isaac had imagined. Other artists began to contribute work. Other printers offered their services. Other families volunteered to sit. It became a movement, small but steady, a quiet rebellion against the fear and propaganda that had defined the war years. And through it all, Isaac and Orla built something together. Not just the project, but a life. They moved between the farm and the print shop, between painting and pressing, between the work of art and the work of restitution. They learned each other slowly, carefully, with the kind of patience that came from understanding how easily trust could break. Isaac learned that Orla sang when she worked, old orc songs in a language he did not speak. He learned that she was afraid of thunderstorms, that she loved honey in her tea, that she kept a journal where she wrote down things she wanted to remember. He learned that when she smiled her real smile, the one with tusks showing, her whole face lit up like sunrise. Orla learned that Isaac was afraid of failure, that he worked too hard when he was anxious, that he had nightmares about the war sometimes and woke up gasping. She learned that he loved the smell of linseed oil, that he could not carry a tune but loved music anyway, that he kept every letter anyone ever sent him. She learned that when he was happy, he got very quiet, like he was afraid to disturb the feeling. They did not talk about the future in concrete terms. Not yet. But it was there in the way they made plans together, in the way Isaac started keeping supplies at the farm, in the way Orla made space for him in her life. In early spring, the portrait Isaac had painted of Orla during their first sittings, the one that showed her careful smile, composed and guarded, was submitted to the Regional Artists Guild for their annual exhibition. Isaac had not planned to enter it. The painting felt unfinished to him, a record of something incomplete, but Judith convinced him to submit it anyway. "It is good work," she said, "and people should see it." The Guild exhibition was held in a town hall in Millbrook, the same town where Vernon Cross had his print shop. Isaac and Orla traveled there together for the judging, neither of them expecting much. The competition was steep painters from across 3 counties, work that ranged from landscapes to still lifes to elaborate group portraits of wealthy families. But when the judges announced their decision, it was Isaac's portrait of Orla that took first prize. The judge who presented the award was an elderly painter named Master Edmond, a man whose work Isaac had admired for years. He stood before the portrait and spoke about the technical skill, the use of light, the emotional depth. And then he said something that made Isaac's breath catch. "This painting shows us a truth we have been afraid to see. It asks us to look at a face we have been taught to fear and recognize a person. That is what art should do, Show us what is real, even when it is difficult." The audience applauded, some enthusiastically, some politely, some not at all, but it did not matter. What mattered was that the portrait hung in a place of honor, that people were looking at it, that they were seeing Orla as Isaac saw her. After the ceremony, as they walked back to the coaching inn, Orla said, "That painting is not finished. I know. I painted you as you thought you should be, not as you are. Will you paint me again, the real me?" Isaac stopped walking and turned to face her. "Yes, if you want me to, I want you to." Orla's smile was small but real, tusks visible, but not a memorial portrait, something different. "What did you have in mind?" "A wedding portrait," Orla said quietly, "if you are willing." Isaac's heart stopped. "Are you asking you to marry me?" "Yes." Orla took his hands in hers. "I know it will be complicated, I know people will object, but I do not care anymore. I want to be seen. I want to be with you, I want to stop hiding." Isaac pulled her close and kissed her, right there in the middle of the street, in full view of anyone who cared to look. When they finally pulled apart, he said, "Yes, to all of it. Yes." They married at the year's end, in the main barn at the farm that was now their shared home. The wedding was small, a few orc families they had painted, a few human friends who had supported the portrait project, Judith from the print shop, and the tenant farmers who worked the land. Orla wore a dress the color of cream, and she smiled with her mouth open, tusks gleaming in the candlelight. Isaac painted their wedding portrait that winter. It showed them standing together in front of the barn, Orla's hand in his, both of them smiling. Her real smile, his real smile, nothing hidden or careful or afraid. When it was finished, he made a woodcut and printed copies, sending them to everyone who had helped with the portrait project. One copy went to Vernon Cross, along with a note that read, "This is the truth. I hope you can see it now." Vernon wrote back a single line, "I can." "Well done, boy." They settled into married life at the farm, splitting their time between the work of farming and the work of art. Isaac continued to paint portraits, both memorial commissions and new pieces for the ongoing project of replacing propaganda with truth. Orla managed the farm with the same quiet competence she brought to everything, and in the spring, she planted the rocky south field with wildflowers. "Impractical flowers," she said when Isaac asked about it, "just for beauty." The flowers bloomed in summer, a riot of color that served no purpose except to exist. Orla would walk through them in the evenings, picking bouquets for the house, and Isaac would watch from the painting room window and think about all the ways a person could bloom when they were finally allowed to be themselves. In their second year of marriage, Orla told Isaac she was pregnant. The news filled him with a joy so bright it was almost painful. But it also brought fear of what their child would face, fear of the world they were bringing a child into, fear of whether love would be enough. What if they hate us? Isaac asked one night as they lay in bed, his hand resting on the small swell of Orla's belly. What if our child faces prejudice because of who we are, what we are together? They will, Orla said simply. People will judge them. People will question us. People will make things difficult. She covered his hand with hers. But we will teach them the truth, that they are wanted and loved and exactly who they are supposed to be, and we will teach them to smile with their whole face, tusks or no tusks, whatever they inherit. No hiding. No hiding, Isaac agreed. Their son was born in early spring, small and perfect and half human, half orc. He had Isaac's dark hair and Orla's green skin, tiny tusks just beginning to show through his gums, and a cry that could wake the whole farm. They named him Lucas, and Isaac painted his portrait before the baby was a week old, capturing the tiny, perfect details of his face. "He is beautiful," Orla whispered, holding Lucas while Isaac worked. "He is," Isaac agreed, "and we will make sure he knows it, every day." no matter what anyone else says. Lucas grew into a happy child, running through the wildflower field and helping his mother in the garden and watching his father paint. When he was old enough to understand, Isaac told him the story of the broadsheets and the portraits, of the lies and the truth, of the work of restitution that was never quite finished. "So you were wrong, and then you tried to make it right?" Lucas asked, 4 years old and solemn. "Yes," Isaac said, "and I am still trying. Every day." "That is good," Lucas said. "Mother says trying is the important part." When Lucas was 2, Orla became pregnant again. This time they had a second son, smaller than Lucas had been, with Orla's amber eyes and a temperament like sunshine. They named him Benjamin, and he smiled with his mouth open from the moment he learned how, tiny tusks and all. The farm prospered. The portrait project continued, growing beyond Isaac and Orla to include dozens of artists and printers across the frontier shires. It did not erase prejudice, nothing could do that. But it created space for truth, for nuance, for the possibility of seeing people as they really were rather than as fear had painted them. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Isaac and Orla stood together in the wildflower field and looked back at the life they had built. 2 sons playing near the house, a farm that thrived, a painting room full of portraits that told true stories. It was not perfect. The world was not perfect. But it was real and it was theirs. "You remember when you asked me to teach you how humans smile?" Isaac asked. Orla laughed, the sound bright and open. "I remember. You told me I was asking the wrong question." "I was wrong about that. It was exactly the right question. It just took me a while to understand the answer." "And what is the answer?" Isaac pulled her close, feeling her lean into him with the ease of long familiarity. "That a smile cannot be taught. It can only be caused. And the best way to cause it is to love someone enough that they feel safe being exactly who they are." Orla turned in his arms and smiled at him, tusks showing, eyes bright with joy. "Then you answered it perfectly." They kissed there in the field of impractical flowers, surrounded by beauty that served no purpose except to exist, and Isaac thought about all the ways love could be a form of restitution. Not erasing the past, but building a future that made the past matter less. Not hiding from mistakes, but working every day to create something better. Lucas and Benjamin came running through the flowers then, laughing and shouting about something urgent and 4-year-old important. Orla scooped up Benjamin while Isaac caught Lucas, and they walked back to the house together, a family built from broken things made whole. That evening, after the boys were asleep, Isaac sat in his painting room and looked at the latest portrait he had been working on. It showed an orc family, parents and 3 children, all smiling with their mouths open. Real smiles. True smiles. The kind that could not be taught, only caused by love and safety and the freedom to be exactly who you were. He signed it carefully in the corner, Isaac Garrett, year 10 of the piece, and set it aside to dry. Tomorrow he would take it to Judith's print shop. Tomorrow they would make copies and send them out into the world, one more small truth to replace one more old lie. But tonight he went to find his wife. She was sitting on the porch, looking out at the wildflower field in the twilight, and when she saw him she smiled. The real smile, the one she had been afraid to show for so many years, the one that had changed everything. Isaac sat beside her and took her hand, and they watched the stars come out together in the quiet peace of a world they had helped to change, one portrait at a time.